This is an applied problem about train travel. The distance d traveled by a train varies directly as the time t that it travels. The train travels 60 kilometers in 1/2 hour. How far will it travel in 2 hours? Well, let's use the 5-step problem-solving process, and we'll combine steps 1 and 2 for this exercise. This is the familiarize step and the translate step. We can do both of these at the same time for this particular exercise because we're told that we have direct variation. The distance varies directly as the time. So we know that we have direct variation. And that then tells us that we have an equation of the form d equals k times t, where k is some positive constant, because this is the form of an equation of direct variation. Now let's go to the next step in the process, which is to solve. That's step 3. And we really have to do 2 steps within this step. The first thing that we need to do is to find the variation constant. Remember, we had an equation of the form d equals k times t, and we need to find a value for k. And we were told that the train travels 60 kilometers in 1/2 hour, so that tells us that d is 60 when t is 1/2. So we substitute 60 for d and 1/2 for t. And now to solve for k, we multiply both sides by 2, and we have 120 is equal to k. And then that tells us that the equation of variation that we'll be using is d equals 120t. Now, the second step then is to use this equation that we found to find that the distance that the train will travel in 2 hours. So we have the equation d equals 120t, and we want to know what d is when t is 2. So we substitute 2 for t, and we get d equals 240. So it looks like the train will travel 240 kilometers in 2 hours, and we need to check that in the original problem. One of the things that we can do to check is to redo the computations. Just make sure we didn't make any arithmetic or algebra mistakes. And the other thing that we can do is just to think about whether this seems like a reasonable answer. The time increased from 1/2 hour to 2 hours, and when that happened, the distance that the train traveled increased from 60 kilometers to 240 kilometers. And this is exactly what we would expect with direct variation. As the time increases, so should the distance. So that tells us that our answer seems reasonable. And we're ready to move to the 5th step in the process, which is to state the answer. We say the train will travel 240 kilometers in 2 hours.